Sakura committed the ultimate sin for a Konoha shinobi, the murder of a fellow shinobi, a teammate, a comrade, and she did it for Sasuke. But Sasuke has left the village, leaving her to take the fall. Sakura has returned to her home with immense guilt. Kakashi discovered Naruto's body the next day. He has taken it to Tsunade, who was able to sense the chakra signatures of both the Yondame Hokage and of Uzumaki Kushina within him. Now, there may be a chance to revive Naruto from the dead. Can she succeed, and will Sakura face consequences for her actions? Welcome to DH Stories 80, where stories come to life. From iconic fandoms to eerie legends, there's always a new world to explore. Now, let's begin Chapter 3 of Unforgiven. Let's dive in. Konoha now. Homura-sama, Crow, one of the Anbu in Bear's team, sent to call the village elders, knelt behind one of them as he was having breakfast. The Hokage requests your presence in the hospital morgue. The morgue? Homura looked over his shoulder in surprise at the man bent on one knee, head bowed low. What is it? What has happened? I am not at liberty to say, Homura-sama. The man in the crow mask replied. Hokage-sama will inform you of everything you need to know. I was only ordered to inform you that this is an urgent matter. Homura, one of the village elders alongside Utatane Koharu and Shimura Danzo, frowned before turning his head away from the Anbu behind him. The man gave an almost imperceptible nod before flickering away toward one of the Konoha gates. Meanwhile, Homura picked up his bowl of miso soup, his mind already racing. If Tsunade was calling him and possibly the other two elders so early, especially while they were still reconstructing parts of the village, it meant something very important had happened, and he feared it wasn't going to be good news. As the Anbu under Bear's command informed the other two members of the Konoha Council, the Anbu codenamed Neko led a team scattered throughout the village in search of Uchiha Sasuke. Her purple hair whipped behind her in the warm wind as she shunshined from one location to another. She had already checked all the training grounds, the Uchiha district, at least the parts that were still standing, and the 4 gates leading into the village. So far, there was still no sign of Sasuke, and she was starting to get concerned. The village gates were in the process of closing when Neko thought to herself, a security measure following the death of the QB container. It has to be, which means the murderer could still be inside the village. She shunshined along the main pavilion between the Hokage Tower and the main gate, passing the surprised Asuma, who was still wondering why the gates were closing so early. Neko stopped on a red tiled roof a few rows away from the main pavilion upon hearing one of her subordinates speaking into her earpiece. 4 sentries found unconscious outside the east wall, Neko. Almost immediately, she took off in the direction of the report. A few minutes later, she landed on the grass just outside the western wall, where 5 other Anbu stood staring down at 4 lifeless bodies. All were bleeding, their faces nearly unrecognizable due to bruising and severe swelling. Frowning, Neko turned and stared out into the forest beyond. This is not good, she thought, turning back towards the bodies. We've been searching for the last Uchiha. The QB boy is dead, and now we found 4 dead bodies outside the western wall, near the gate. This section wasn't hit during the invasion, so most of the sentries usually posted here had been temporarily reassigned to the eastern and southern walls. She sensed more Anbu approaching and turned as 5 more landed beside her. Then she looked back at the forest. The Uchiha is somewhere in the village. So could these bodies be connected to the death of the QB boy? She turned to her fellow Anbu. I'll inform Bear of the situation. 4 of you, get the bodies back into Konoha. Then she turned to the 5th Anbu, a man in a white porcelain mask with red and black highlights. Raven, get a tracking team. Comb the surrounding area for any chakra signatures. What are you thinking? Raven asked in a low voice as he looked at the bodies, then at Neko. An unknown enemy attacked the QB boy, Neko replied, or where she was lying, as the other Anbu looked at her in surprise. Now we find 4 bodies at the least patrol section of the wall. It's possible an enemy slipped in through here to... Hold up, one of the Anbu interrupted. The QB brat, how bad was he injured? Bad, Neko said simply. The man in the eagle mask shook his head. Damn, I saw that kid fight the Hyuga brat. That was something. Yeah, Neko whispered, staring at the bodies. He fought the Sans Jinchuriki too, and won. On his own. A genin beating another tail beast container? The Anbu in the sparrow mask said, rubbing the back of his head. Damn, troublesome kid, but you've got to respect that. So, someone just slipped into the village last night, got past the elite Anbu, and badly injured our biggest asset without anyone knowing. Another Anbu muttered, voice grim. Not good, someone else echoed. I take it this is an S-class secret? Triple S, Neko whispered. Damn, another muttered. Heard people saying good things about that kid lately. Neko took a deep breath and turned to face the forest again. There's nothing that way except... Her words trailed off. She mentally pulled up a map of the area around Konoha, and her eyes widened. The Valley of the End. It's a nearly 36-hour journey that way, and... She stiffened. Raven immediately noticed. Neko? He said, watching her carefully. Neko didn't answer. Her mind flashed back to the Konoha crush, the sand and sound invasion. Orochimaru had tricked the sand into joining forces to attack Konoha during the Chunin exams. She, like the rest of the Anbu, had been briefed afterward on the threat Otogakure posed, and she remembered clearly from maps that the Valley of the End was the closest border to the former land of rice paddies, Otogakure's location. She looked back at her team, thoughts swirling. It was a giant leap based on flimsy evidence, and she really hoped Sasuke was still in the village. That the only reason he hadn't been found was because he didn't want to be. But Orochimaru wanted the last Uchiha in Konoha. That much was known. If sound operatives were sent here, they could have killed the Kibi boy, then kidnapped the Uchiha kid, Neko thought. Her heart sank. She whispered, oh no. Something in her gut told her Sasuke was no longer in Konoha. She couldn't explain it, but the fact that the elite Anbu hadn't found him yet, a genin, was deeply concerning, as was the possibility that enemy ninja had slipped into Konoha to kill Naruto. Please let me be wrong, Neko thought. Then she said aloud, you have your orders. Raven, get a tracking team, search 5 kilometers out, and if you still haven't found anything, contact me. I'm going to bear with my suspicions. Understood, Raven said. Neko took off, bounding up the wall and into Konoha. As she moved, she felt her team's chakra signatures scattering into the forest. She pressed her earpiece, switching to her commander's frequency. Bear, she whispered. We may have a problem. I need to speak to you immediately. Understood, came the reply as Neko continued toward her superior. Team 10. 10 minutes after leaving the Hokage Tower. Hey, Asuma-sensei, what's going on? Shikamaru asked as the team stopped in their tracks, startled by the sight of the giant gates beginning to close. Asuma frowned. He knew the gates had only ever been closed during the Third Shinobi War, when battles reached dangerously close to the village or in the face of an impending invasion. The gates were also routinely closed between 8 in the evening and 6 in the morning. And the other reason would be a battle drill, Asuma thought as he glanced back at the Hokage Tower. It's well past 6 in the morning, and there's no ongoing war, so this has to be a drill. He turned back towards the gates, frowning. But even then, the Jonin are always informed in advance so we can adjust mission timings. He scowled. The mission was likely going to be postponed. He looked down at his genin and informed them, we're probably dealing with a battle drill. You'll be assigned duties accordingly. The 3 of you head back to the Hokage Tower and get... Asuma stopped mid-sentence. Overhead, he spotted Neko speeding away in the direction of the hospital. Several other Anbu followed, leaping from rooftop to rooftop in multiple directions. At first, he dismissed it. The Hokage had the authority to stage unscheduled drills. Still, it was highly irregular for a Jonin to be left uninformed. He glanced at Shikamaru, who was yawning and scratching the back of his neck. Asuma was well aware Chunin weren't briefed on battle drill protocols. Those were for Jonin and Special Jonin, who were meant to take command, but the Jonin commander, Narashikaku, Shikamaru's father, was supposed to alert the Jonin, who would then inform the teams. None of that happened. Something was off. Asuma looked back at the Hokage tower, unease creeping into his chest. Either way, he had to get into drill mode. He ordered his team to return to the Hokage tower for orders while he went to meet Shikaku. If there are no orders, go home and stay there. I'll give you the all clear once this drill is over. The team nodded and rushed back towards the tower. Asuma turned toward the closed gates, troubled. What's going on? The Anbu are moving in search patterns. There's a sudden drill, and his eyes narrowed as he spotted a familiar dog sniffing the air before disappearing in a shunshin. Was that Bakun? Asuma thought. The sense of dread in his chest deepened. Shaking his head, Asuma dashed away, trying to convince himself that it was just his imagination. Konoha Hospital. It had been 5 minutes since Naruto's body was wheeled into room 5A. Tsunade was the last to enter, but not before instructing Kakashi and Guy to wait outside until they received news from the ninja dogs. She turned to the two Anbu guarding the door. Owl, go down to the morgue and wait for the elders. Tell them I'll be speaking with them via secure line from the operating theater. Understood, Hokage-sama. Owl replied before vanishing in a swirl of dust. Rabbit. Tsunade turned to the second Anbu. Stay out here. Rabbit nodded. Tsunade looked at Kakashi and Guy, biting her lower lip. I need to assess the extent of the damage. Healing him will be incredibly difficult. He's already dead. The mystical palm technique only works on the living, so I'll have to go in and manually reconnect his main arteries. I'll be using every ounce of my medical knowledge and the best technology we have. I'll do everything I can to bring him back. But this won't be a simple case. This is almost impossible. She turned away from Kakashi's sorrowful expression and glanced at Rabbit. Forget my earlier order. Jiraiya should still be in the village. Search all the onsens. Find him and bring him here. Tell him Naruto needs him now more than ever. Send him straight to the morgue. Hi. Rabbit nodded and vanished in a swirl of leaves. Tsunade sighed, then turned back to Kakashi and Guy. If I'm not out within the day, that doesn't mean anything, she said, her voice faltering as her eyes dropped to the floor. Thoughts of the boy who had brought her back to Konoha flashed through her mind. She took a deep breath and looked up again, meeting Kakashi's eyes, then Guy's, then Kakashi's once more. After I speak to the elders and Jiraiya, I'll be locking down this entire floor. Only medical personnel will be allowed in, she stated. I'll do my best, Kakashi. Guy. The two Jonin nodded silently. But prepare for the worst, Tsunade whispered before walking into the room and slamming the door shut behind her. In the hallway, Kakashi and Guy remained motionless. The fluorescent lights reflected off the dull red stains of dried blood on Kakashi's arms and flak vest. The metallic scent lingered in the air as the two stood quietly, staring at the closed door. Guy glanced over when Kakashi murmured, So many people hated him for something that wasn't his fault. So many avoided him, ostracized him, scolded him, but he never faltered. He let it push him forward. Tsunade-sama is the best medic in the world, Kakashi, Guy said gently, placing a hand on his friend's shoulder. He is in good hands, and yet no one dared hurt him because of the Sandaime's law, Kakashi said, ignoring Guy's reassurance. If anyone tried, the Anbu would intervene. That only happened once. For years he was left alone, and now Kakashi looked down at the floor. Guy pressed his lips together, remembering the broken version of Kakashi that had walked Konoha's streets alone after the deaths of Obito, Rin, and the Yondaime. The man beside him now was that same Kakashi, lost and hollowed, and now After everything he's done, after he saved the village and the people finally began acknowledging him for the hero he's always been, he was murdered. I still have faith in Tsunade-sama, Guy said. And you do too, or you wouldn't have brought Naruto to her. I do have faith, Kakashi whispered. He recalled the blood spattered across Naruto's bed and floor, but you didn't see his room. There was so much blood. Even with 2 chakra sources sustaining his heart and brain, I'm afraid that the Naruto who survives may not be the Naruto we knew. You have two other students, Kakashi, Guy reminded him. They'll need you today. Come. While the Anbu search for Uchiha Sasuke, we should inform Haruno Sakura. He gave Kakashi's shoulder a supportive squeeze. At a time like this, you need people who care around you. Kakashi nodded as the two walked down the hallway toward the elevators. I need to wash this blood off and change clothes first, Kakashi whispered as they stepped inside the elevator. I'll tell Sakura after that. I just hope the Anbu finds Sasuke soon. Guy nodded. The elevator carried them to the ground floor, and when the doors opened, they stepped out into the crowded hospital lobby. Civilians and shinobi alike waited for their appointments with doctors and specialists. Just as they exited the building through the front doors, Bakun landed in front of them. Kakashi, Bakun said, looking up, I have a trail. Kakashi and Guy exchanged a glance, then turned to the ninja dog. Whatever plans Kakashi had to clean up were shoved aside. Catching Naruto's killer now took precedence. Let's go. Elsewhere, Neko had reached Bear and informed him of the bodies discovered near the eastern wall. She speculated that the enemy, likely Otonin, could have overpowered the guards, slipped through reduced security, and entered the village to kill Naruto. Based on Sasuke's disappearance and the Anbu's failure to locate him, she further suggested the enemy may have abducted Sasuke. They could be long gone if they escaped the same way they came in. Bear nodded. I'll inform the Hokage. In the meantime, continue with search pattern Alpha. Until your theory is confirmed, we must assume Uchiha Sasuke is still hiding in the village for unknown reasons. Neko nodded and vanished, leaving a swirl of dust in her wake. The Haruno home. Sakura snapped her eyes open after an uneasy sleep. She had been twisting and turning in her bed, waking up nearly every hour before trying to return to some semblance of rest. But whenever she managed to fall asleep, the same nightmare returned, again and again. She was standing over Naruto. The blonde was on his knees. She had one hand tangled in his hair, the other gripping a kunai. The blade's sharp point barely touched the skin beneath his ear, just behind his jaw. Sakura-chan? Naruto would ask in her dream, his voice trembling, his body shaking. He couldn't move, not because he was restrained, but because of who was about to kill him. Why? And she would always answer, for Sasuke-kun, Naruto. You have to die so I can be with him. The dream always ended the same. Sakura drove the kunai into his neck, and blood gushed out like a fountain. Her eyes would snap open as her heart pounded in her chest. Her hand pressed tightly over it, her breathing ragged. Her pink hair clung to her forehead and shadowed her eyes as her bottom lip trembled, haunted by the look of betrayal on Naruto's face. Naruto, she whispered, closing her eyes as tears streamed down her cheeks for what felt like the 100th time that morning. Please forgive me. Please forgive me. Wiping her nose, she turned to look at the curtains covering her window. Then she turned away from them, the weight of her guilt pressing heavily on her shoulders, and sat on the edge of her bed, her feet flat against the carpet. A part of her insisted she stay home and sleep. She needed it, desperately. She may not deserve rest, but it was necessary if she didn't want to endanger herself or Kakashi when the Hokage assigned 2 new genin to Team 7. Although she wasn't even sure if Team 7 would remain intact or if she would be reassigned. Taking a deep breath, Sakura reminded herself of the plan. She needed to find Kakashi at the bridge before they began searching for their teammates. She rose from her bed and shuffled towards the restroom, her feet dragging on the carpet. She flipped the light on and gasped. Naruto was standing there, arms crossed over his chest. No, Sakura whispered, shaking her head and squeezing her eyes shut. No, come on, Haruno, Naruto's voice said as he suddenly appeared beside her, whispering into her left ear. Sakura spun around, her feet sliding on the carpet. I'm gonna be in your head, he whispered. I'll see you naked, Debayo, whether you like it or not. And now, not now. Please, not now, she begged, eyes still shut. You can't stop me, Haruno. Naruto chuckled. When she opened her eyes, she met his pale blue gaze. The word guilt had appeared across his forehead, and he pointed to it with a sneer. Because if you forget what you did to me, that already makes you the cruelest monster of all. I am guilty, Sakura whispered, looking away. I can't stop. I don't think I can stop feeling guilty. Then tell Tsunade what you did, Naruto said. Accept your punishment. It won't take the guilt away, she murmured, her eyes filled with sorrow. You'll still be there. Of course I'll be here, Haruno, Naruto said with a grin. Like I said, you can never get rid of me. He glanced over his shoulder at the washroom, then back at her. Well then, he said, I think it's time we took a shower together, don't you think? Sakura's hands trembled as she began to remove her pajamas, eyes closed, her guilt manifesting before her. She gulped as the cool air brushed her bare skin, and when she finally opened her eyes, Naruto was gone. It's okay, Sakura, her inner voice said softly, as she breathed a shaky sigh of relief. I've kept the guilt away, for now. I'll do all I can, Sakura, but I don't know what else to do. I know I need to tell Tsunade-sama, Sakura whispered, leaning back against the wall, the bathroom door to her left. But I'm afraid. I'm so scared of what she'll say, or do, or... She covered her mouth with both hands, shoulders trembling, tears falling freely now as a horrifying thought crept in. The penalty for killing a shinobi from the same village is death. I killed Naruto. I knew Sasuke couldn't leave the village and I said nothing. She squeezed her eyes shut, imagining the look on Kakashi and Tsunade's faces. She imagined all her classmates staring at her in disgust. I can't. As she slid down to the carpet, her back still against the wall, she remained unaware that Pakun had just landed in front of the Haruno apartment building. Behind him, both Guy and Kakashi touched down. Kakashi stared up at the building with a strange look of recognition. Kakashi? Guy asked, noticing his friend's expression. Pakun sniffed at the steps leading up to the first floor. He pointed a paw at small red spots on the fourth and sixth steps. Guy crouched down and examined them, brushing a finger against one. He sniffed it. It's blood, he said. Kakashi didn't respond. He continued to stare up the stairs. Kakashi? This is Sakura's apartment complex, Kakashi finally said, glancing down at Guy, who shook his head. That's just not right, Guy said, placing a firm hand on his friend's shoulder. Whoever killed Naruto lives in the same building as his teammate. He sighed. We must continue on, Kakashi. We'll find out who killed Naruto, and then we'll tell Sakura. That would be best. Kakashi clenched his fists. The image of Naruto's lifeless body surrounded by blood seared itself into his mind. Whoever had done it must have been filled with hate, an extreme amount of it. The violence was personal. There were many in the village who hated Naruto, but Kakashi believed things began to shift after the Sand Sound invasion, after Naruto defeated Gaara and saved the village. Still, the hate never fully vanished. Guy's right, Kakashi thought. The person who killed Naruto lives in this building. We'll find him. Then I'll talk to Sakura. Kakashi recalled how Sakura hadn't always been fond of Naruto. Her attention always focused on Sasuke. But over time, they had grown closer as teammates. She did care for him. I promised you everything was going to be okay back on the hospital roof, Kakashi thought. And I try to keep my promises, Sakura. Everything is going to be okay. With a breath to steady himself, Kakashi nodded. Guy placed another supportive hand on his shoulder. They gave Pakun the signal. The small dog led them up the first flight of stairs, then the second, then the third. Pakun stopped at the door to the Haruno home. Please, don't let it be. No. I have to stop this train of thought. Sakura may not have liked Naruto, and sure he could be annoying, but there's no way anyone, especially someone from our team, could. Pakun looked up at the two Jonin and pointed at the door. The scent of blood leads here, he said. No. Kakashi closed his eyes, leaning back against the stairwell banister, trembling. When he opened his eyes again, he stared at the door. He remembered the first time he was invited into the Haruno home on team assignment day. He and the Sandaime had visited her civilian parents, who welcomed them with tea and sweets. And now, he stood outside the same door. I'm back here again, he thought. Then his eyes locked onto Guy, who was already staring at him. Kakashi swallowed hard before whispering, This is Sakura's home. He saw Guy's eyes widen, and then both of them watched as Pakun's eyes widened as well. I'm sorry, Kakashi, Pakun said, clearly surprised. I can smell 3 scents. One belongs to a single individual, but the other two, one of which includes Naruto's blood, are from the same person. They're on the other side of the door. Could it have been the parents? Kakashi whispered. Kakashi, Guy murmured. I can't take care of this. You should go to the hospital and check in with Hogaki-sama. It has to be me, Kakashi interrupted. His heart ached at the potential destruction of his team. One member killed, another suspected of the crime. Or it could be one of her parents, and a third one missing. Please let this be some kind of sick mistake. Please, gods, let this be a mistake. Kakashi stepped forward and knocked on the door. The group waited as footsteps approached from the other side. The knob turned, and the two Jonin and the Nin dog found themselves face to face with a light blonde-haired Haruno Mebuki. Kakashi-san? She asked, confused. She's not the one, Kakashi. I'm not getting the second scent from her, Pakun whispered. Mebuki looked down at the talking dog, startled, then up at the stoic Guy, and finally back to Kakashi. Kakashi-san, this is a surprise. Is everything... We need to talk to Sakura, Haruno-san, Kakashi said, his voice cracking. We need to talk to her now. In her room, Sakura was still leaning against her bedroom wall when she heard her sensei's voice. She froze. It was too soon. They weren't supposed to meet until after breakfast, for their training session at 10. Why is he here now? No, she thought, tears beginning to stream down her face as panic set in. Something had changed, something terrible. She wanted to hide, to vanish like a mouse, but that fragile hope was shattered when her mother called her name from the other side of her door, and she heard the unmistakable sounds of Kakashi, Guy, and Pakun entering the house. A bark followed. Sakura's breath caught. Kakashi must have used his nin dogs. They know about the blood. Frantically, she got up and locked her bedroom door. Then she backed away just as the sound of claws began to scratch at the wood. She sobbed, picking up a pink robe off her bed and wrapping it tight around herself, her hands trembling as she tied the sash. Every approaching footstep from the hallway made her heart race. Kakashi-san! Her mother's voice came from the hallway, now filled with rising panic. What is it? What's going on? There was no answer. The footsteps stopped right outside Sakura's door. She fell to her knees, sobbing, covering her mouth with both hands as she tried to stay quiet. Tears poured from her eyes. She glanced toward her closet and remembered her blouse from the night before was still inside, unwashed. There had been bloodstains on the front. She had planned to wash it after returning from their assigned mission. The knocking resumed, followed by Kakashi's voice, strained. broken, and unfamiliar in its anguish. Sakura, he said, open the door, please. I, I know, I know, I saw the body. Well, well, murderer, came Naruto's voice from inside her head. He was leaning against the wall, smirking as he stared at her. What do you know? Kakashi-sensei's here. Looks like your little plan's falling apart, huh? Sakura sobbed harder, shaking her head violently as she slowly stood on trembling legs. Kill yourself to escape what's coming, Haruno, Naruto sneered. Kill yourself, you monster. Kakashi-san, Mibuki's voice cracked now, frightened. Please, someone tell me what's going on. Sakura, what's going on? Sakura-san, came Guy's voice, more gentle but firm. Please, you need to open the door or we'll be forced to break it down. That warning sent a jolt of panic through her. She staggered to her desk and grabbed a pen with shaking hands. Still crying, her vision blurred by tears, she snatched up a piece of paper and began writing. Sakura, I'm giving you until the count of 4. Kakashi said from outside. His voice was barely holding together. I want to know why. I want to know. Please, I need to know why you killed him. Who? Mibuki cried out in anguish. Who did Sakura kill? Sakura, please come out so we can fix this. Please. There's no fixing this. Sakura screamed between sobs as her pen dragged across the rough paper. There's no fixing this. She kept writing. Sasuke-kun left the village, heading for Orochimaru. I wanted to go with him, to prove that I would follow him. He told me to kill Naruto. I killed Naruto. I know I will not be forgiven for this, and I don't deserve it. I only hope that he can forgive me in the next life. I am sorry, Mom. I am sorry, Daddy. I am sorry, Kakashi-sensei. Once she finished, she bolted to her closet and yanked it open. She grabbed her hip pouch, unzipped it, and pulled out a kunai. As she turned the blade inward, aiming it toward her chest, the door to her room exploded open. Kakashi was the first to reach her. He was fast. He grabbed the hand holding the kunai just as Guy and Mibuki rushed into the room. They saw Kakashi force the arm down while squeezing Sakura's wrist in such a way that her fingers released the weapon. Her arm dropped to the side, and the kunai fell onto the carpet just as Kakashi brought his left forearm against her neck and slammed her against the curtain-covered window behind her. He was panting as he stared into the tear-filled eyes of the Genin girl. Her breathing was shallow as he leaned into the arm pressed across her throat. Kakashi. Kakashi-san, please stop. Kakashi, please stop, I'm begging you, Mibuki screamed, her voice panicked. The cries seemed distant to Kakashi as he locked eyes with Sakura. Her gaze was full of fear and anguish, her guilt clear in her jade eyes. He wanted so badly to push further, to lean in. He wanted to kill her. He could smell it now, in her room, faint but unmistakable. It was blood. Naruto's blood. Did you know? Kakashi growled, even as he heard Guy physically restraining Mibuki, who screamed for mercy, for leniency for whatever her daughter had done. But Kakashi didn't care for leniency. All he could see in his mind's eye was Naruto's lifeless body. It didn't matter that the chakra signatures of his sensei and the woman he once called One-chan had been found inside Naruto's body. What mattered was that Naruto was dead. There was no guarantee he would be brought back to the world of the living. All Kakashi would focus on now was the torment in Sakura's eyes. My father was a Hatake who married a woman from the Inuzuka clan, Kakashi said, panting. Sakura sniffled as tears streamed down her cheeks. My sense of smell is just as sharp, maybe sharper than Kiba's, and I can smell Naruto's blood. On you, in this room. It's coming from here, Pakun said solemnly, pointing toward the open closet. Guy, Kakashi called over his shoulder. Guy was restraining a sobbing Mibuki who was pressed against the wall near Sakura's desk, her arms pinned behind her. Her front shook with sobs as Kakashi continued. Can you get whatever it is Pakun found. Guy looked at his friend and nodded before glancing down at the back of Mabuki's head. Please, Haruno-san, he said gently. Don't make this harder on your daughter than it already is. Don't make it harder on any of us. Slowly he released the sobbing woman after she nodded. Mabuki turned around, slumping against the wall, her hands covering her mouth as she whispered between sobs. What did you do? Oh God, Sakura, what did you do? Sakura closed her eyes and sobbed while Guy stepped past Kakashi. He crouched as Pakun pulled a blood-stained blouse from the closet. Guy stared at the blouse for a long moment before turning to Sakura. Why? He asked, the only question echoing in his mind. He knew it would be the same question his own students would ask when he told them what had happened. He had no answer. From the way Sakura was crying, she didn't have one either. And it is murder, Guy thought, as he glanced at the panting Kakashi, who looked ready to snap Sakura's neck. Naruto, for all intents and purposes, is dead. Guy closed his eyes, shaking his head at the absurdity of it all. Sensei, Mebuki muttered. Guy was the first to look at her. She was holding something in her hand, a piece of paper. Her face twisted in horror as she read. Then she looked up at Sakura, her mouth agape. Tears streamed down her cheeks. Sakura, why? Why did you? Why? The note fell from her hand and fluttered to the carpet. Mebuki stumbled back and collapsed to the floor, sobbing against the wall. My God, Sakura, why? What have you done? Do you even understand what? Kakashi, Guy whispered urgently, leaning in close. I can't imagine how you're feeling right now, but the Hokage needs to know. Sakura was responsible, and the village is under an unnecessary lockdown. Guy walked to the paper Mebuki had dropped. Kakashi remained silent, still glaring into Sakura's eyes. Guy walked to the paper Mebuki had dropped. Kakashi remained silent, still glaring into Sakura's eyes. Guy glanced at the crying mother on the floor, then crouched and picked up the paper. His eyes widened as he read what was clearly a suicide note. He stood quickly and rushed to Kakashi, eyes locked on Sakura. When did he leave? He demanded. Kakashi said nothing, his focus still locked on Sakura. She opened her mouth, struggling to breathe. Guy grabbed Kakashi's arm, reminding him that judgment belonged to the Hokage. He turned to Sakura. Which way did Uchiha Sasuke leave the village, and when? What? Kakashi hissed, whipping his head toward Guy. Guy held out the paper. Kakashi read the words in Sakura's handwriting. Then his gaze snapped back to her. You... If Sasuke has left, he has a head start, Guy said. I'll take Sakura to the cells at the Hokage Tower. You go report this. Sasuke told you to kill him? Kakashi's voice shook with rage. And you said yes? I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, Sakura gasped. Her voice strangled as she fought for breath. Her eyes bulged slightly as she choked out. I'm sorry. Kakashi, Guy shouted, seeing the deadly intent in his friend's eyes. He was a member of your team. So is she, for now. Murderer, Kakashi hissed, tears falling behind his mask. Kakashi, the boy has turned traitor. You need to tell the Hokage, Guy yelled, grabbing Kakashi and forcing him away from Sakura. The girl collapsed to her knees, gasping for breath. Guy stepped between them, facing Kakashi. Go, report this to the Hokage. Let her decide Sakura's fate. Kakashi glared at him for a moment longer before turning away, his eyes distant. In a swirl of leaves, he vanished. Guy sighed and looked at Mebuki, still sobbing in the corner. Then at Sakura, on her knees, head bowed, tears falling freely. He didn't know what to say. What could anyone say at a time like this? All he knew was that he was deeply worried about Kakashi. The man had been the only survivor of his original Team 7, Obito, Rin, and the 4th Hokage. Gone. And now Once again, he was the only one left. Naruto was dead. Sakura was a murderer. Sasuke was a traitor. The name Team 7 is cursed, Guy whispered. Sakura slowly looked up. Her eyes were red and swollen. Guy shook his head. Stand up. Sniffling, Sakura rose unsteadily to her feet. Guy stepped forward and placed a firm hand on her shoulder. I don't know what was going through your mind, but I loved him, Sakura whispered, wiping away tears that kept coming. He was going to leave Konoha. I offered to go with him, and he told me I had to kill Naruto, and I did. She broke down again, sobbing uncontrollably. Oh God, I killed him. I killed. Her voice failed as she fell to her knees once again. Guy knelt, placing his hands gently on her shoulders. Then he looked towards Mabuki. I'm taking her to the cells at the Hokage Tower. You'll be informed of the next steps. And with that, Guy and Sakura vanished, leaving Mabuki alone in the room, sobbing at the ruin her family had become. To be continued.